Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be checking out Upper Echelon and their take on BetterHelp. Now, I'm not too familiar with Upper Echelon's content as this is the first time we'll be looking at their videos. BetterHelp, however, I understand is an online therapy platform. That's all I really know about it. But considering we like to dabble into psychological fields on the channel, I figured this would be a good opportunity to check it out together, see their perspectives, and give our thoughts. So, without further ado, let's get into it. The BetterHelp YouTube virus is back.
This video is brought to you by Incogni, which is actually kind of fitting given the subject matter. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they are providing to the entire Upper Echelon community. What is BetterHelp? Odds are a lot of people watching this have actively seen advertisements for the service here on YouTube, maybe Facebook, or elsewhere, loosely understanding it to be an online therapy application for matching patients with licensed professionals. Pretty simple. The ads paint a picture of something kind or approachable, and the sponsorships they authorize talk about how burnout is a really difficult process and how help is just a few clicks away. But with tens of millions of dollars pouring into the YouTube ecosystem, hundreds and hundreds of videos promoting the service, and a rapidly growing
To be fair, I've seen a lot of these advertisements.
list of creators affiliated with them, I wanted to examine the full scope of this service because it's not quite what people think it is, and prospective customers need to be aware of that. To do this, we need to go back in time. 2018 was many things, some good, some bad, but relevant for today's video, 2018 was the time frame when BetterHelp initially found traction on the platform by sponsoring a very large number of YouTube creators. These creators would very often talk about how valuable the service is. They would draw connections to their own personal lives or express their own struggles, which is fine. People can promote things that they also believe in. Except there was a bit of a discrepancy between what was being said about the company and what users were actually experiencing. Anecdotal evidence is overly abundant here, but the gist of it then, and still today now, is that many users were complaining about unnecessary fees, difficulty canceling subscriptions, or problems with the service
Poor
that left
advice.
them completely unsatisfied. As an example, users who actively subscribed to the platform often had enormous difficulty canceling that subscription.
And to be fair, I mean, anecdotal evidence is anecdotal evidence unless you do a meta-analysis on the anecdotal evidence, making it normal evidence. And if there's enough of it and you provide surveys, assessments, scales, stuff like that, then, that's a fair take.
They were repeatedly required to confirm their intentions and faced with things like this. Typically, when you go to buy something or cancel something, green means yes, do the thing I'm trying to do, and red means no, I changed my mind. Also, buttons to the left typically denote cancellation or go back, and buttons on the right signal confirmation or go forward.
I mean, don't want to look too much into this. I think that it can also be perceived as quit therapy, as in like stop your improvement, stop the path that you're on is a bad thing. And then green is don't quit, keep going. And it could be viewed as a couple ways. I get the take. I'm not sold on that's the reason. It could be a lot of things for sure. I know that other businesses incorporate the same practices, and that's obviously without the context, but
BetterHelp, even though this is a relatively small item in the grand scheme of things for the video, would pretty blatantly try to trick their customers into hitting the green button on the right, which would then actually halt the process of cancellation, because the goal wasn't convenience or satisfaction. The goal was to manipulate their user base into remaining on the platform with an active subscription, which would then continue to rack up charges even in their absence. Something else we can look at to kind of help showcase this is that even last year, that being 2023, BetterHelp dispersed $93 million in refunds, which constituted 8% of their entire revenue stream.
yeah.
It's difficult to find direct comparisons for that figure, but it's worth noting that the number of people who actually pursue and complete a refund process, especially a difficult one, is substantially lower than the number of people who are overall dissatisfied with any given service, which begins to put things in perspective. You don't have to look very far to start finding many more clues about what kind of company this actually is, but try this one on for size. After a pretty horrifying tragedy took place at a festival called Astro World in Houston, there's a 1,200-page police report about what happened, which is pretty chilling, honestly, but the gist of it is that a hyped-up crowd compressed in on itself at a concert, and multiple people died as a result of that. After that tragedy occurred, BetterHelp partnered up with Travis Scott, who many believe to be partially responsible despite managing to avoid criminal charges.
Did they use a catastrophic event as advertisement?
And offered a free month of online therapy to all those
Oh
affected. Yeah,
man.
the subpar remote therapist application, in partnership with a negligent rapper who excited a crowd and caused a tragedy, are showing how much they care together by basically giving you 4 free telehealth sessions on an application that breaches your privacy and tries to keep you trapped in a cycle of payments. That's really fantastic, guys. Good job. On top of this, as if that's not already enough to form a judgmental opinion of them, there was a bit of a problem with their terms of service. According to archives, their TOS previously contained a segment which said, quote, "We do not control the quality of the counselor services, and we do not determine whether any counselor is qualified to provide any specific service."
Gonna have to read that again. Whether any counselor is qualified to provide any specific service. This is not something they determine, which means anyone can say anything. And then it continues, as well as whether a counselor is categorized correctly or matched correctly to you. So you're just going to get whoever. They may be licensed, they may not, hey, maybe they're just good at talking. You're going to talk to a talker and they're just going to be like, well, this is what I think you should do.
What?
Yeah.
Now, that particular
That's
passage
actually pretty
has since been removed, obviously,
smart.
but it further demonstrates that the company has a really unstable foundation with the public when it comes to common perception, and their chosen tactic to remedy this is just lots of money. I already talked about how prolific BetterHelp used to be when it comes to YouTube sponsorships, but what I didn't say is that these YouTubers were getting paid something like $100 to $200 per signup when they advertise the service. Some affiliate websites show a minimum commission of $100 per trial user, making it an extremely lucrative thing to advertise this mental health application and make it seem like a worthwhile service to use. Well, that was then, and this is now, so what precisely is connecting these 2 points in time? Answer: BetterHelp is connecting these 2 points in time because they are exponentially dialing up their advertising, once again, possibly relying on the fact that internet users have a very short attention span, and probably hoping to capitalize on a younger demographic of adolescent teenagers and early young adults who have been aggressively told that their mental health is the most important thing ever in the history of the universe.
Here's an issue with the information going out about mental health, psychology, psychiatric issues, and mental disorders. With the increase of the information going out, there was also an increase of prescribed and the diagnosis of mental conditions. Now, on the surface, that correlation looks fine, looks reasonable. The more you know, the more you can self-diagnose. But what does the book also say about self-diagnosis and the student diagnosis phenomenon? 9 times out of 10, they're often wrong. It's equivalent to before this, where people would use WebMD as their doctor and they were wrong. They're like, oh, I got this rash on my thumb. That means I have cancer. Crap. Right? It was the same concept. Just because you know more doesn't mean you fully understand what's being talked about, because a lot of people want to use mental disorders as a way to label things about themselves so that way they can excuse their behavior and not work on the thing that the label says is fine or is norm in regards to the label. That's not how mental disorders work. Mental disorders are on the basis of biological differences and not on the basis of, oh, you've never learned how to control yourself and so you're very impulsive and this is how you blame it. That's not the same.
For the majority of their living lives, making them not only hyper susceptible to this, but also relatively uninformed if they didn't pay attention 6 years ago when BetterHelp initially encountered controversy on the platform, which was also pre-COVID, which allows them to capitalize even further on the dramatically increased tolerance people have for telehealth and remote medical solutions, which weren't nearly as popular before then. According to research by The Out Loud,
well, what happened was FDA approved digital treatments in 2020 because of COVID-19. And so what you saw was a massive wave of ways to do telehealth and teletherapy, virtual therapy, and things of the sort through video calls, phone calls. Because they approved it, it started as like ADHD treatments for children. That's how it started. But then they broadened the stroke under a massive umbrella and made it seem like everybody can do it. And it's just like, no. Teletherapy or variations of therapy that are not physical in presentation are good in lieu of physical presented therapy sessions or physically seeing client practitioner relationships, because a lot of the times that people are going through mental dysfunction, a lot of disorders constitute forms of lying, grandeur, or discounting. And the practitioner needs to see the person in their environment and how they dress and the way they conduct themselves as a way to properly monitor the progression of said individual. That never happens over the phone. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if you think that virtual is the same thing, it's not, because you don't see what that person is doing with their hands. You don't see what that person's doing with their feet, or what's around them, what's going on outside of that room, what have you. And it's a huge difference. And that's why even house checkups were necessary for some of these individuals. But that's where the digital component came from, is from FDA's approval.
Group. BetterHelp went from sponsoring roughly 392 videos in third quarter 2022,
really
up
spiked
to
after 2020.
636 in first quarter 2023, 1,237 in the second quarter, nearly 2,000 in the third quarter. That's a pretty massive increase over time, on track to be roughly 10 times higher over the span of just 1 year. But seeing that made me wonder why. Why are they doing this now? And what's the reason to dial up advertising that much on a platform whose community previously ejected them with very little sympathy? Before going further, today's video is brought to you by Incogni. Incogni
Sponsor.
is all about online privacy and data protection. That's actually been one of my hobbies lately, owing to how important protecting your data is in a modern digital world, increasingly so. Every single day, your data is at risk of being sold by third-party brokers or accessed without your knowledge in data breaches. Some people don't care, but they should care. The number of identity theft victims has gone up over 41% since 2021. And for anyone who wants to prevent that kind of thing, Incogni can help. Your personal information is absolutely everywhere now, and not just in the archives of companies you know about or signed up for on purpose, but other data firms as well, who then sell it all across the internet. For everyday users, it's a nearly impossible task to take any action at all because there are hundreds of these data brokers, and it's a lengthy process to contact them, fight objections, and get something removed. However, Incogni does all of this for you quickly and easily. The process is incredibly simple. Sign up for the website, give them specific legal permission to work on your behalf, and let them know what kind of information they'll be having removed. After that, sit back and just watch them work. Aggregating this kind of service lets them do what would otherwise be an all-consuming and nearly impossible task for individuals, which is why so many people have so much information online that they never even know about. Using the link down below in the description and code Echelon at checkout, you'll get 60% off an annual subscription to Incogni. I could go into a lot more depth on this. The services they offer and the value they provide is quite large, considering, but for the sake of time, I have to keep it trimmed. Again, link down below and promo code Echelon for 60% off your subscription. Big thank you to Incogni for sponsoring the channel. So the question is why? Why would BetterHelp come back and dump that much money into YouTube right now? Well, I dug around for a while, no luck here, no luck there, but finally I stumbled on something. CareDash. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, which is probably everyone, CareDash is a platform meant to connect people to various doctors, dentists, and therapists. But I shouldn't say the word "is" here, because CareDash doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, it turns out CareDash was a fraud scheme that had been posting profiles of real physicians, clinicians, and therapists, most importantly, without their knowledge or consent. That might seem strange, but the incentive is actually very, very straightforward. CareDash would host the profiles of real therapists, but then if someone tried to use their platform to actually book an appointment with that therapist, CareDash would say, "Oops, sorry, they're not accepting new people right now," and refer that potential customer directly to BetterHelp. Try to stay with me here. I learned through an escalated federal lawsuit that CareDash was operated by a company called NewFit Media. And NewFit Media is a multi-million-dollar startup funded by a venture capital firm called Link Ventures. It's got all the typical...
For a second, I thought CareDash was going to be a way to bypass the psychiatric prescriptions in order to just get drugs delivered to your house, because of the BetterHelp therapy sessions that were obviously unprofessional, inconsistent, and things of that nature. And I was just like, damn, they got a whole system. But no.
Bells and whistles, world-class partnerships, and strong and passionate creative teams, etc., etc. But if we compress it down to a basic point of reference here, CareDash was a multi-million-dollar fraud platform driving traffic through unauthorized use of therapist profiles to BetterHelp, which was shut down in the first quarter of 2023. This is where my Chrome window almost crashed completely because I had so many tabs open. And yeah, turns out that BetterHelp is actually a wholly owned subsidiary acquired by a company called Teladoc in 2015. Teladoc is a publicly traded company, thankfully, which means they have to disclose financials. So theoretically, I should be able to check what's happening, and presto goes the dynamite, yes, I can. In the second quarter of 2023, shortly after the closure of CareDash, which was funneling customers directly to BetterHelp through a multi-million-dollar startup platform, and directly before they started exponentially increasing their advertising push on YouTube here, Teladoc disclosed that BetterHelp had roughly 476,000 paying users. However, in the fourth quarter of 2023, as BetterHelp is approaching a 10 times higher amount of advertising on YouTube, again, according to research from the Out Loud group, Teladoc disclosed that the number of paying users for the platform had actually decreased to 425,000. That may seem small, but it's actually about 50,000 users, and it's over 10% of their entire customer base. From my perspective, based on the information I've collected so far, it seems like the company is desperately trying to make up for the loss of CareDash, which was benefiting them tremendously as a primary user intake method through their affiliate program, despite not being directly associated with BetterHelp as a company. And they're bleeding subscribers every single day as they
I mean, you could argue that because of COVID-19 dying down on the back end of 2022 and like the parameters around it, it could also led to people's health, people getting better because they weren't locked up into their homes anymore. And seeing a loss of 50,000 on the back end of the implementations of COVID-19, I mean, that kind of makes sense too. And now that they're not as concerned, I don't,
funnel money back into YouTube, hoping that people have somehow forgotten who they are. That's my guess. Thankfully, there's a couple more pieces of the puzzle here that tie everything together quite nicely, so yeah, let's go over those before doing a final summary. In July of 2023, BetterHelp was officially charged and penalized for sharing health questionnaire answers and other data with advertisers. It's a paltry sum, to be completely honest, 7 point whatever million dollars. Affected users, of which there are roughly 800,000, are getting less than $10 each, while the company seems to spend more on YouTube advertising in a single year than the entire fine demanded that they pay. But regardless, it gives a foot in the door to see what's really going on. Quote, despite representing to consumers that BetterHelp would keep consumers' information private and only use their information for non-advertising purposes, BetterHelp used and disclosed information obtained from consumers through the intake questionnaire and sign-up process for advertising, end quote. So they lied about the data policies, told their user base, we won't use this information, and then turned around immediately and used it for advertising. Awesome.
So for those that don't see the significance of that, confidentiality in medical practices, especially with APA, and that's American Psychological Association, as well as American Psychiatric Association, it is very, very important. Establishing consent and allowing for anonymous input has always been part of significant scientific practices, especially when it comes down to self-assessments. Because in order for people to be as honest as possible, they often have to have confidential information. And it's one of the golden rules that's applied for practitioners is to always have a realm of confidentiality with your patients. And so the person that's on top of BetterHelp is not a practitioner. He's not a social guy. He's not a social person. They have to be someone who is strictly business and business oriented and just saw a market need and wanted to capitalize on a market need. And that's all that's happening here.
But it gets better, or it gets
if this document holds true, obviously.
Funnier, maybe. That's probably the wrong word. These are serious topics, I know. But consider this. In 2018, CEO Echelon
businessman, investor, and that's it. Silicon Valley. Oh boy.
Published a Medium post that said, quote, one of the favorite conspiracy theories was that our business model is selling data to third parties. This is such a far-fetched conspiracy.
It's such a Zuckerberg approach
that I feel awkward addressing it. Our model is simple. Members pay a fee to get counseling. Counselors are paid to provide counseling. We are in the counseling business, not in the data business. There is nothing we take more seriously than the security and privacy of our members. It also goes without saying that counseling is a strictly regulated space, and selling such data would be a gross violation of federal laws, state laws, HIPAA regulations, and our own terms and privacy policy. End quote. Okay. Conspiracy theory, hardly even worth responding to, I guess, according to one of the founders. But from 2013 to 2020, according to the now settled FTC investigation, docket C4796, the service was, quote, continually breaking privacy promises, monetizing consumers' health information to target them and others with advertisements for the service. For example, from 2018 to 2020, respondent used these consumers' email addresses and the fact that they had previously been in therapy to instruct Facebook to identify similar consumers.
This is a formal
and target
complaint.
them with advertisements for the service, bringing in tens of thousands of new paying users and millions of dollars in revenue as a result. End quote. Oopsie. So BetterHelp is growing just fine while ignoring basic data protection and privacy. But then, after the practice is discontinued, and after an openly criminal affiliate of theirs no longer funnels patients to them with fraudulent profiles, that's when they suddenly take a nosedive and start hemorrhaging customers. Correlation does not necessarily equal causation, but I mean, come on. It actually goes even deeper. According to an investigation by Jezebel, which monitored traffic from the BetterHelp application and then compared some of it to associated personal data records from Facebook, from the moment the intake questionnaire was filled out, quote, BetterHelp began to silently slip data to dozens of third parties, monitoring our behavior online and signaling to companies like Facebook, Google, Snapchat, and Pinterest that we were considering BetterHelp treatment. Further down, quote, during a session with a therapist, we found that metadata from every message, though not its contents, was also sent to the social media company, meaning that Facebook knew what time of day we were going to therapy, our approximate location, and how long we were chatting on the app. When we asked about this directly, BetterHelp declined to elaborate on why a social media company needed to know quite so much.
Because if they can track everything else going on, then they know who is more likely to seek a platform like BetterHelp, and therefore they can implement the advertisement in their algorithm as a form of success and reach out to those people because they're seeing likeness in the data that they achieve in the numbers and third-party information that's received.
Much about when and how we were asking for help, details that were connected to our Facebook profiles and thus our identities, end quote. That's a lot, but let's do a summary here. BetterHelp, a prominent...
This says right there, monitoring people's habits and desires, and then demographic data, all leading to who is more likely and who is not.
And
what conditions must exist in order for them to be more likely.
A prolific YouTube sponsor in the 2018 years was paying enormous affiliate fees and raking in tens of thousands of users until the community caught wind of what they truly were and basically ousted them. In subsequent years, they collected data from their user base, used and distributed that data illegally to advertise with social media companies, got caught for it and paid a fine, while also benefiting from the illegal traffic of a multi-million-dollar medical startup that was impersonating therapists. The FTC busted them directly for the data. CareDash got taken down by the FTC as well after a complaint by the NASW. And right after all of this happens, BetterHelp starts bleeding tens of thousands of subscribers. Meanwhile, they start massively dialing up their YouTube advertising campaigns, including the number of videos that they actively sponsor, because, what, time to try it all again? As if the YouTube community isn't going to remember who you are and what you did, on top of the other stuff you just did in the meantime while trying to make a comeback? Really? That's the plan? I can't say for sure, and I don't have absolute certainty, but what I see is a company trying to weasel its way back into the ecosystem, and I'm not having it. Please let people know, please make other creators aware that while sponsorships are perfectly fine, of course, I do understand people need money. If they can, it's probably best to find a sponsor that's a little bit more reputable than BetterHelp, because pretty much any YouTube sponsor is more reputable than BetterHelp.
Majority of people won't care.
I don't normally ask this, but please share the video around. If you want to support, there's links down below. Protect your data with Incogni, kind of a perfect sponsor for this one. Locals and Patreon for monthly memberships, etc., but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything, and have a nice night.
So that was the video by Upper Echelon, and here's the thing. There's not a lot of people that are going to care. Not a lot of people that are going to care. The only indirect damage that this has is, one, it's indirectly affecting people who see therapy because it reaffirms or further affirms their idea that therapy is a hoax, a scam, pointless, useless, whatever. That can be damaging. It can be. It can be damaging in the perspective of what therapy can be, because there are people that see a lot of success with it, especially when there is a harsher detriment, like mental disorders going on, and it's not seeking therapeutic practices because of just poor mental health or having a hard time with stress or dealing with catastrophic events. And it directly affects people who do want to seek therapy, because it's like, here's this platform and they're just being manipulated like stock. And you really discredit the craft, especially in the realm of someone like me, who has sought out and conducted practices of resiliency skills, life coaching, and things of that nature. And when you have people at the top, like this owner, this investor, who doesn't give a damn about helping people, well, he's going to create a model that is the most efficient in the realm of financial gain and not the betterment of people. And maybe if he was a practitioner, if he was successful as a practitioner, maybe his approach would be different. Maybe it would be more scaled towards less predatory practices and more genuine gain. And maybe that would have been different. Someone like Dr. K, obviously from an outside perspective looking in, because I don't know his whole system. I don't know how he does everything, but that's an avid licensed practitioner who has an organization behind him and who does have a platform and systems in place that people can utilize. But an investor, an entrepreneur, I'm gonna say 9 times out of 10, he ain't give a damn about the people he's helping. It looks good on paper. This is how many people we've helped. This is how many calls, messages, video sessions we have had. Wow, that doesn't matter, because the overall concern is how to increase profits, and it's not how to increase the help of people or the efficacy of the help that these people are being treated with or are receiving. And if you're not putting the person first, especially in the realm of psychology, you're discrediting the craft, you're discrediting yourself, as well as every single practitioner or therapist. Obviously, we don't really know that is involved with such an organization. It sucks because it almost seemed that from the outside that it was a convenient way to see basic level forms of therapy, which would have been fine. But this does kind of get in the way, especially if the documents provided were on the basis of actual legal or formal input, and it wasn't just made up stuff to try to hate on whatever, right? Oh, therapy's bad. Look, they're messing it up, obviously, because that can be a thing too. But hopefully that's not the case. So thank you for everyone that watched the video. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you appreciate the content so far, consider subscribing and hit the notification bell to receive notifications about content in the future. If you dislike the video, then dislike it. Hopefully never see me again, but also leave a comment in the comment section down below for what you've been thinking about an organization like BetterHelp or about just teletherapy in general. Obviously, I gave my input and my perspective of what works and what doesn't work, considering the patterns or research that I've seen myself, but would love to have a conversation in the comment section about the same topic, as well as hear the thoughts of others. So with that being said, thanks again, and I'll go ahead, see you next time.